Hey everyone, my name is Justin. Welcome to today's advanced webinar on managing your operations with monday.com. Thank you all for joining me today. So how's everyone doing this morning first before we get started? It's going to be a heavy webinar. And if you don't mind, would you also mind letting me know just like what industry you're in and where you're tuning in from? There's snow today? I wish there was snow here. Real estate, social services, climate services, nonprofit, security, all over the place. That's great, fantastic. Insurance, fine jewelry. Can I have some? New London, Connecticut. Hello, fantastic. Finance, cybersecurity. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Here is today's agenda. So what we're going to go over is best practices for managing your operations, useful boards, concepts, different views and advanced options. We're going to have a little bit of dashboards, and then we're going to have a Q&A section after that's all over. So what are we going to cover today? And I've kind of gone through that with the agenda, but just showcasing you many ways you can implement your operations workflow into monday.com. So expect to see boards showing everything from welcoming new team members, how to have your own internal support board inside the platform, managing certifications, and much more. We will also discuss some recommended automations for these processes, how to utilize different views on the board, and how to aggregate some useful information onto a dashboard. So one last thing before we jump in, let's go over some general housekeeping tips. So feel free to ask questions at any time during the webinar, but use the Q&A button on the toolbar of your Zoom screen. This is going to be the place where we want to make sure that we get to all of your questions, and that's going to be answered after the first half, which is the webinar portion of this webinar. We will try to get to, again, and answer every question during the Q&A. If yours is not answered, feel free to reach out to us at support@monday.com. Audio will be through your computer speakers, so if you can't hear or see what I'm doing with my screen at any point of the webinar, please type in the chat box. Following the webinar, recording will be uploaded to monday.com/webinar. That could take a couple of days, but just so you know, this is where you can find it. We'll also be emailing this out to all attendees as well within a couple of days as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So just a little background on the specific use case I designed today. We are a company that works with dog adoption companies to provide foster parents to dogs until they find new owners. Just a little crazy out there use case. We're called Dog Paradise. The first board I would like to show you is our Welcoming to Dog Paradise board. This is where we keep track of all new employees and ensure that they have everything they need to be set up for success. You can see here that we separated the board into different departments. So we have HR, we have accounting, we have foster parents, and we have leadership. This allows us to quickly see who works in what department and if they have everything they need. Using these status columns, we can keep track of what stage in the process each team member is in to ensure that they have the best onboarding experience. So we have the basic generic status column that just lets us know where we're at in that stage and if it's done. We have their work gear, we have their workstation and their computer. One thing that's useful, let's say within workstation, you need to get a little more granular. Maybe you have some line items that you would like to include in that as well. If you notice when I hover over, there's a little dog here. I can click in here and I can just go ahead and add a checklist. So we can add everything from this person needs a MacBook Pro. They need a keyboard, mouse, charging cable. And what this allows me to do is I can keep track of each individual person that comes in. So Hermione Granger, she has her workstation, and we have some to-dos that we need to get in order to get this process. And as we go through, I quickly can see here, all right, these are the to-dos we need, and I can check these off. And you'll notice that this green mark just starts to check. So included with everything else that we're working on, this will let us know, did we actually complete their workstation? And now we are. So they've assigned a workstation and they have everything that they need. You'll notice here that we have a progress tracking column, and this progress tracking column has different weighted counts to better reflect at a glance where we're at, right? So essentially, if we click inside this drop-down column here, we have our column settings. And here you'll see a list of all the different weights that I've applied. Now, just be aware that this has to add up to 100, so you can make that any weight that you want across all the status columns. You can choose to include one or not include one, or you can just distribute it equally. But for me, some of the things that were more useful, at least in my use case, is 50% for the computer, because we need that for you to start working. Your workstation, not so much, but we have work gear and then overall status to have that reflect. So this is just really quickly at a glance, let you see how much more needs to be accomplished before we're ready for our new team members. You notice here that we also included a drop-down column that has the different sizes. So we can include as many different labels that you want here. And this just works in conjunction with making sure that we have the work gear for our team members. And then we have their date of hire. So to jump up to the top of the board, I created an item here called total needed. It's a head count of who is needed within the company. On this item, we have some collapsed columns, and this is designed for later use with our dashboard, but I would like to go through and show you those. So here we have HR, accounting, foster parents, leadership, and then this indicates that one of the columns are collapsed. So I can open this column up. You can quickly see how many staff we would like to have across this entire board. And then to collapse these columns again, you click in the dropdown, and I can hit the collapse column. What this allows us to do is collapsing columns is a great way when trying to keep your boards clean and more organized. Visually, you may not need them all the time, right? Again, we're going to be using it in the dashboards later, so we don't need to necessarily see this information all the time. But what if we wanted another way to clean up this look? We could create a view. So what that allows us to do is I can click on the hide or the filter options here, and I can choose to start hiding specific columns. So if I don't want total staff needed, or I don't want HR, you notice these columns start to remove from the board. And then you can save this as a view and name it what you'd like, so that you can only see what's most pertinent to you. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and add all my columns back because I've already created a view. And here, this drop down lets me choose which view I would like to see. And I could see our working view. So from our working view, you notice all those collapsed columns I had prior are gone. And now my team can just focus on making sure that everyone that comes into the company is ready and geared up to go, and we have everything completed. And then just nice to have is also a chart view here, which you can add this view here from the charts. Here, I'm organizing it as a pie chart by group, and it's weighted by the count of the items. And this just gives us at a glance, percentage-wise, the breakdown of our company. So the next group of boards we will discuss is our operations support and then office supply boards, but we're gonna start with the operations support board first. This board is designed to allow our team members to reach out with any issues they may have, so we can promptly support. Everything from needing more supplies to replacing a computer or an item at their workstation. We will fulfill these requests here. Some of the pain points that we've noticed is that this here allows you to know what the status is on the requests. We don't know who's dealing with the requests, and we're also losing the ability to collect data if we don't have, this kind of board. So with this board, what's great is I can find out what are the most requested items that people need. How quickly are we taking to resolve things? And you'll notice that I have this board separated by incoming requests, in progress, and then also completed. Here we have the requester, the assignee, the different status columns. This status column is the overall status for the project that represents whether we're working on it, new requests, and I've added and edited the labels here. And then we have our priority. I've also added a couple of date columns, one for expected completion date and then completion date. And I'm gonna go a little more depth into why I have the two different columns. But before that, this board is created using another one of our views called the form view. The form view I've added from our view center here, which shows you all the different views. And what it allows us to do is my team can now input any information or any support requests that they have submitted via this form, and then we can pick that up and process those requests. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the form view is going to work based off of the board that you're working with. So make sure when you build this board out, it doesn't have to have every single column on the form, and I'm going to show you how to hide some of those, but you do have majority of the structure in the layout that you're looking for, so that you can get those requests submitted into the board, into the appropriate columns, and then process those requests accordingly. So let's go back to that form. So here I've renamed the requests to operations help requests. I renamed our first column on the board to how can we help? And then here you'll notice on the right that we have the options to make something required or to hide it. And I've made this column required because we want to know why they're submitting a request. I've hidden from view the status, priority, and the date columns simply by clicking on the eye. You'll notice that it's bolded now, which means that they can view it on the form. And here is a hidden view, so they will not see this because this is only for internal purposes. And then the name of the person that sent the request, if any photos or files are applicable, and then any additional information that they would like to see. Now, we want to make sure that we organize this in a way that works well for our workflow. So here on this side, it gives us more settings to configure how we want to use this form. So within this form, I have my incoming requests, and I've selected the group that this is the group I want this form to go into. After they've submitted it, I have a thank you message, and then I've written, we have received your request and we'll update you when we have started. Once this is done and this is all set, you can share this form, and you have the option to share it as a clickable link, or you can embed it into one of your websites. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how this form would work. 1 second. So once we go ahead and open up another tab, this is the view that they would see. I can say that I need a new charging cable, input my name, and then no additional information, and I'll just hit the submit button. Here, you'll see the thank you message that they've received. And then on our board, we've now received our new requests. We've added some automations to the board as well to make this process a little more easier for us to complete. So you'll notice here that the date auto-filled itself. That was because of an automation. And then I also have an automation set configured to notify everyone a part of a team I created called the operations team to notify us of all new requests that have come in. Here's the automations menu here, and we're going to go through some of those. So here you have your automation center. This is going to be the place where you would choose to configure an automation, and everything that's underlined is a location that you would need to fill in order for that automation to be updated. But what we're going to go to is board automations. These are the ones I've configured, and there's a lot on here now, but they're all going to be really helpful in just helping us deal with this support process. So when a new item's created, I have it notify our operations team. And within these automations, you can reconfigure them and choose messages that you would like to display. So here I chose to pull the information from the name or the request that they're submitting and the requester's name so that it can tell me a new request for this item has been submitted by this. And then one person is just asking how I got to the form again. So I'm going to show that really quickly. You'll click main table, add view, more views, and then there's a form option in here to add that to the board. So once we're in our automations, I also have a couple of other automations. So depending on what status it changes to, I want to notify the requester during that process so they know what's happening with their specific request. I have an automation here. Sorry, I'll try to talk a little slower. So I have an automation here as well that when an item is created, it sets the expected completion date to today's date plus an additional 3 days. What this does is I have an expectation for my team that we should complete every request within 3 days of it being submitted. So this is going to keep us on that guidelines, and you saw that date get submitted on that board as well. Then I have another one that sets the completion date to the status, the date to 0 days. So what that will reflect is once we've completed and we've changed it to request filled, we now have our date that was estimated completion and our date of completion. This is going to be useful in then trying to drill down a little bit later and figure out how long is it taking us to complete these requests? Are we being as productive as we can be and efficient as we can be? And then a couple of more labels or automations here to move things between specific groups on the board. And then the last one here is I did mention that we were going to talk about another board as well. This is how we're going to communicate with our team on the board with our supplies. So let's go ahead and look at what that process would look like. So here I have my new charging cable requests. I can see that it was submitted by Justin. So it's just going to so happen that I'm going to make myself the requester and the assignee. It's now a new request. We're going to set this priority to high. And as this goes through the process, we'll change that to working on it. This moves down to the next group. As it goes to working on it, I can scroll over to the amount requested and say that we only need one charging cable. As it goes from here, anything that we complete when you hit the request is filled, that will move down to the lower group. And then you have, or maybe not, but let's just drag that down there. No worries. And then we have one more thing that I would like. So in this specific use case, Justin has a charging cable, and we need to know the amount that they requested is one, and we need to make sure that we can update our office supplies. So here I'm going to put in a request for these supplies. So once this request goes through, the operations team will receive a notification via their bell or email letting them know that this request is submitted, and inside of that request, it's going to tell them how much of that item that they need. They can then pick that up on the office supplies board. Our office supplies board here will allow us to keep track of all the inventory that we have and what is requested. Here I have some columns indicating the items that we have, everything from computers, computer equipment, some swag that we have, to the status of the item, if it's in stock, if it's running low, if we refilled it recently, the total quantity, and then I also have some additional formula columns here on the end. This formula column indicates if we are above the quantity or below, and if we need to reorder. And it's a simple formula that I put in that pulls in the quantity from here and says if it's below 10 to reorder, or say that it's enough. So I would like to backtrack just a little bit so that we can pull in the information from the previous board. So on the operations board, we submitted a request for a charging cable. And here, since I'm a part of the operations team, I've received a notification that says we need one new charging cable to complete this request for Justin. So now that I'm on our supplies board, I can go to the MacBook charging cable. I can update my inventory. And then I can go back to the operations support board and then change this to the request has been filled. So this is how your team can easily communicate between the two different boards to make sure that this process has been updated and reflected accordingly. And then one of the cool things about this process is I'm also calculating how long it takes for me to complete these tasks. So you see that this one took me a day, this was less than a day, and then this gives me some information as far as how much time it's taking us to complete each task, so we can drill down a little bit further about where we can fix some kinks in the process. So on this inventory board, we do have a couple of more things that I would like to go over. So I've also built in a way to reorder specific stocks. So you'll see here that we have some things that we're running low in. I added in a date column that lets us know when's the last time we reordered, and an automation that will update the date when the columns, when this status changes to order place. So once that changed to order place, it should update this as well. When we put in an amount that we're going to order, 10, I have two collapsed columns here that calculates the cost automatically for that item. So I have the price listed for each individual item, and then it also updates the cost of that item. So now we can keep track of how much are we spending when we do refill new items and so on. And as we get those new requests, I can say that my order is placed. The date will then get updated in the refill date column. Let's just refresh. All right, so the date didn't get in, but I'll just put the date in manually. But the date does go, it's supposed to go into the refill column. And then here, that's the automated process, and I know when that order is placed. Once this order comes in and we put in that we've gotten 10 new items, I can then take the requested amount off, and you'll notice that my column on the end that says reorder or enough has now updated itself to reflect enough for this one. And I can just say that we're good and we're back in stock. So this is a good way to keep on task of what you have in your inventory, and that's working in conjunction with your support board and how your team can communicate effectively with each other. So the next board we are going to review is our certifications board. So here you can see this is a pretty basic board. We just want one place to keep track to ensure everyone is up to date on their certifications and checks. Here we have different status columns to represent each certification type. We have the person assigned to the column so that we can send notifications to them to let them know when they need to renew their certifications, or if we're waiting for a process to be handled when it comes to these. Excuse me. We also have a column that indicates when the last check has took place. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. And in this way, I have it set that this is the last date that the certification was actually completed. You can also, if you choose to, have it where it represents the next date. So it can update for you ahead of time using automations. So with that, the automations can set the dates and move the items to the different groups that you may need to keep that process moving along when you're going through this with your team. So in the automations that we have here currently, we have one that's for 2 days before. This DWT is a specific date column on our board for dog training arrives and dog welfare and training is not passed. We want to notify people on our team so that they can go in and they can make sure that they complete that training by the specified date. And then these automations are different ways that you can configure this board to push those dates later. So we can choose to either push the dates after the date has arrived, or we can push the dates when the date has arrived. And I have it that when sexual harassment training changes to pass, to push the next date to 365 days. So let's go to the sexual harassment training. Barry Allen, it's now time for them to complete this training. So as they complete it, they're gonna go in and they're gonna add in their certification of completion. And I have a nice little certificate here that I can add. The certificate gets added to the file column. Once that's added, I can then change this to passed. Once this is passed, the next renew shipping and handling training date should get pushed 365 days. Or not. Let's try one more thing. Let's toggle this off and on. So let's put that back to need to renew. Let's try this one more time. Okay, so I seem to be having some difficulties with my automations. Jackie's spot on, but that happens from time to time, like not often, but I mean, at least whenever you need it to work within everyone else or in front of everyone else, it doesn't. But essentially this will push this to the following year so that this will get updated for October 4th so that we know the next time that Barry Allen would need to do the sexual harassment training. And then once this comes in, oh, now it pushes after I change the date, but just a little delayed, but it does push the date after it's recognized as pass. So before going over to dashboards, I do have 2 more boards that I would like to touch on. Hopefully these boards are a little more fun, so I saved them for last. So we have our office events and parties. So one thing that's great is this is just a high-level board to give us an idea of events that we're working on this month, events that we're working on next month, and all of our past events. You see here that we can keep track of everything in one place. We have our date and timelines of every event, whether it's an in-house event, if it's an external event. We can quickly keep track of all of our events that we have happening for the month, and even the concept is still in process or if we have it completed. So I've also included a numbers column to keep track of our budget and a location to ensure we know where the event will be held. You'll notice here that there's a lock here on this column type. I've included this to ensure that this is the one thing that we do not want to change on the board. So we want to make sure only the people that can change, whether it's an outgoing or external event, internal event, conference, offsite, charity, we want to make sure that we keep this consistent across the team and only the people that should be updating it should. So in order to change these type of column permissions, you'll click the drop down arrow. Column permissions will be here, and then you can choose to either remove the restriction, which I'm going to do here, or add edit or view. So in this specific use case, I want to hit edit. And then once you do that, you can choose to add anybody that you would like to edit. So for right now, the only person that can edit is me. But if I wanted to add my colleague, Carrie, I can add him. And now Carrie can also edit this column as well. So this is just a really good way for us to quickly at a glance, keep track of all of the different events that we have going on, the different parties, the different budgets that we have. And then later, this budget column is going to come into play on our dashboard. And then the last board I would like to show you is our ops swag request board. So here on our office swags board, we can input requests for new swag for owners or clients that we have externally or internally. We will then see who and where this item needs to be shipped based on the submission. So everybody for the team can come in here. They can write in the specific request that they have. They can see the different stage that it's in, whether it's in requests, waiting to ship, or shipped. They can put their email here so we can reach out back to them. The sender is myself because I'm the one managing this board. Uh, the requester here The requester here is the person that has submitted the request. Maxim, just to quickly answer your question, all these boards are made. I made these myself and added all these different columns, the emails, the people column, and the status columns as well. So I do play Apex Legends. You're right, Jackies. Sorry if I said your name wrong. So we do have 3 different status columns here. One status represents whether it's packaging, shipped, or and if it's waiting to ship. We have which office if it's going to be in, if it's for parents, if it's for our first office, our second office, or and the urgency of the column. Here we've added just some additional date and text columns and phone number columns to keep track of all the additional information we would need in order to fulfill these requests. So here I can see how much swag the person is looking for based off of their requests, any additional comments, the address we are potentially mailing it to, phone numbers, and the point of contact that I would be interacting with. And as we continue to go through this process, it's very simple. My team, we're working on the SOC, so I can say that we're waiting to ship, move this down to the waiting to ship section. So now everybody on our team gets a glance and they can see exactly what's happening with all the different boards across our account. You'll notice that the inventory for this board is also handled on our office supplies board, just at the very bottom here. So you can see all the different swag. So everything's nicely managed in one location as well. So now that we touched on all of these best tips and practice boards, let's go over a dashboard and how we can aggregate this information from your different boards into one view. So I've already created a dashboard. You do have the ability to add as many dashboards as you like and to look at different things that you like to manage. My dashboard is down here. So here I have my nice dashboard of the current employees that we have, a nice breakdown of the different departments that we have and how many employees we have in each, the total amount of staff that we have. Here you can see all of the inventory levels listed from highest inventory going down to our least inventory that we have, so our current inventory levels. I have an aggregated board from our high-level events and party board that shows us the total estimated budget that we're going to be spending for that. What's the total progress on all of those specific projects on that board as well. Here, I can quickly glance at the table for that board and see what's happening as well within that board. If you want to build a dashboard, know that it doesn't have to be all, just specific to work. So I also added in a nice little quote of the day. So the only person you should try to be better than is the person you were yesterday, from Maddie Mullins. So you can have this quote show up on as a widget on your board if you would like. When adding a widget to the board, you can add one from clicking this button here. You can also add it by clicking an available widget space that will be displayed like this. When you click inside that, it's going to give you the most common widgets here. But if you hit that more option, motivation Maddie, let's go Sam. You have all of the recommended widgets here, and you can choose anything that you would like to add, from a llama farm to time tracking. If you're keeping track of how long it's taking you to complete these specific tasks, you can have all of this information listed on the widgets here. Now, I do want to go back to a previous board just to show you a little bit about how I aggregated some of this information. Need more animals than just llamas? Give some explanations, like what type of animals would you like? So I would like to go back quickly to our original board, the Welcome to Dog Paradise board. And we're pulling in how many total employees we have here based off of a formula column that I've added that's on the very end of the board. This formula column calculates each one of these items as one, and then I can pull this in to count the total amount of people we have within the company so that I can then keep track versus the total needed amount. What's great about this is on dashboards, you can start to filter this information and really get a view that you would like to see. So I have current employees, but what if for total staff, I only wanted to see HR needed? So I can click into the settings wheel, scroll to choose which columns to include. And instead of doing total staff, I'm going to include our HR. And now I know that we need a total of 5 HR. This still reflects total current employees, but I can go into the settings here, and then I can choose the groups that I would like to reflect. And now I can see that we have 3 HR versus total needed staff. You can rename these options at any time by clicking the filter, clicking in here, and then I can rename this to HR. So it really gives you the ability to just quickly at a glance in one location, let's make that HR needed, see how many employees you need, or anything for that matter. Remember, the numbers column that I'm using in this use case is I'm using it for employees here, but below I also have a budget being pulled from another board. And when you add this information, you create the widget. I can go in and add a numbers widget, choose the boards that I would like to aggregate my information from. In this case, I actually want to use the office board and not the dog paradise board. And then I can choose the columns I would like to include. So I can choose my budget column. I can choose more settings. I can filter this to make it a $sign, change if I want to add more things, or I can add, choose which groups I'm pulling from as well. So if I don't want past events and I only want this month's and next month's events, I can see that and not see what the estimated budget is for the past as well. And then I could rename this. One person did ask, what formula did I use for the total count? Just so you know, it's a very, very high-end formula. I just put the number 1, and it's going to spit that number out in every single item going forward. So if you just put the number 1 in, it's a very creative way to just count all of the items on the board. You can also count all items on the board by collapsing all the groups, and it shows you here. But this way, using the formula column, I can count everything on the board in a widget and then see all of that as well. Also on this dashboard, you'll notice here that I have a timeline. This is very, very good if you would like to aggregate a lot of information from different boards so that you can see where your projects are, who's available. So just a little bit above, here's my timeline. I can see what am I working on across the different projects. I can see it based off of weeks. I can see it based off of months, and quickly at a glance see where my projects lie, what's stuck, what's in progress. And I can still filter this information. So if I click in here, it's going to show the board it's pulling from, and I can start showing everything that I need here. So with that, that's the last thing I wanted to show you there. It's been a pleasure with you. This specific session, Carl, isn't ran live again, but we are going to be giving you a recorded link within the coming days. So look forward to that so you can rewatch that. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us at support@monday.com. I hope this was helpful. Let us know if you need anything. We're happy to help, and everybody have a great day.